Oh yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh yes. Fractal Bitcoin. But this is the Bitcoin panel. I made a cool little thumbnail for today's show. But the Bitcoin panels where we hang out, we talk about all things Bitcoin. It's on Friday afternoons for an hour, and we have awesome people on here who know a lot more about Bitcoin than I do. I don't actually know that much, but so yeah. Happy you're here. We're going to talk about a bunch of different topics, but the preferred place for you to watch through is Rumble. But of course, we're streaming on YouTube as well. And we're also streaming on Zap.stream, which is a Nostr platform. So I'm going to be bringing those up in the background. But AC is here with us, and so is Walter X. How you guys doing?
What's going on, Chris? All good on
Oh,
this
yeah.
end, man.
What's up? Where the heck are all my topics? I actually prepared some topics for today, but let's start with the price. Look, a lot of Bitcoiners say, "Oh, I'm not in it for the price," which is BS. But also, I understand the sentiment that it's not all about the price, right? Like price is part of it, and I get that. But when the price starts pumping, it's more exciting, isn't it, AC?
Yeah, I think that once you go through your first full cycle, the price becomes um, less intriguing and interesting. I think, like I said last month, or sorry, last week, number go up is what got me into Bitcoin. And then seeing number go down, and then the community and learning about Bitcoin and discovering freedom go up is what kept me through it in a bear market.
Right. Freedom go up. I love that. That's pretty cool. What about you, Walter X, the X man?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before the show. I was telling AC I don't really ever really check the price out. I only noticed it today because I saw it trending on Twitter. But it's always nice when it's up. Up is better than down. Especially just to encourage new people to get into it, and to kind of dispel the haters a bit is always nice, I guess.
Right. So,
Yeah.
do you guys have any? Where's the price going to go from here? Are we going to keep sort of melting upwards, or is there still a chance we could, go back down to, into the 30s or something? What do you think is going to happen?
Well,
yeah,
I'll
go
jump
ahead,
in
AC.
first.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, thanks. Kind of like what Walter said, I try not to look at the price, on a daily basis. I don't look at Bitcoin in the short term. I don't look at it in terms of weeks or even months, really. I try to take a low time preference perspective, like a lot of Bitcoiners do, and that's really like on the order of years or decades. I think once people take the time to invest the hours to study Bitcoin, the value proposition of it becomes clear, and you no longer have to look at the number on a daily basis. And so uh, I'll say this though about if it's going to go up or go down on a long time horizon. I think Bitcoin has no top, and I'm not the only one. I've stole this from somebody, but I don't remember who said it. Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom.
Well, it has a bottom, which is zero. But yeah, no, I agree. Bitcoin does not have a top because it's capped at 21 million Bitcoin, and the amount of value that human beings, focus and harness into Bitcoin, that there's no limit. Just like human potential, there's no limit, right? Like,
Yeah, and I know Putin's and everybody's got Putin on their mouth today with the whole Tucker Carlson thing. But I mean the stuff that the U.S. did with the currency and shutting out Russia, and basically negating millions or billions of dollars worth of funds for political reasons. I mean that just kind of adds fuel to the fire for this. The dollar's definitely on the way out. I think it's still awfully strong, but that action, kind of single-handedly, I think, really put a huge deflated the balloon quite a bit. That and then all the ridiculous COVID money burning. It, and it was already kind of out of control, right? I mean, just all the ridiculous wars and all the ridiculous spending. Yeah, I feel like definitely Bitcoin's an unstoppable force. Personally, I think it'll get to 100 million a coin at some point. I'm not saying when or how or exactly when that is, but I really don't see how it doesn't at least get to 100 million a coin at some point.
100 million, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Wow.
think that's like what we call dollar parity, right? Where every Satoshi is worth $1.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and then so if that's the case, if one sat ends up equaling $1, imagine. I saw someone on Nostr post this today that like these guys who are zapping people every day, 1,000 sats here, 1,000 there, like literally zapping probably 20 or 30,000 sats a day. Like if later on they're each worth $1 million, that's insane, right?
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, you've got to look out. Like Walter said, we don't know when that's going to happen or if that's going to happen. But if it does, what is the purchasing power of that $1 at that point? I mean, I could see a world where everybody's a millionaire, but your purchasing power isn't what it is today.
Right.
Yeah, a $10,000 loaf of bread.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you look at like the
And it's only
Zimbabwe
Wonder Bread.
yeah, and like the Zimbabwe $1 trillion bill. I mean, that in a hyperinflationary environment, that is definitely a possibility.
True. But I was reading the Bitcoin Standard, which I just finished a couple weeks ago, which was awesome. And this is a book I'm just gonna go back to the beginning and read it again, and then go back to the beginning and read it again, because he does a great job writing it, but at the same time, there's so much. It's a dense book, right? But anyway, yeah, he even talks about, in that book, you talk about there being no limit to the price of Bitcoin, but there's also no limit to like when a society has a sound money, there's no limit to what that society can do. I know maybe that sounds weird.
Yeah, have we even seen it? I mean, what really truly is comparable to Bitcoin in terms of its purity as a foundation of money?
Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to share this screen. Uh-oh. This is okay. I'm going to work on sharing the screen, but the topic I want to bring up is this guy who let me see Da Vinci Jeremy. He's an early Bitcoin adopter. He actually believes that Satoshi worked for the NSA, and his security clearance gave him the knowledge to develop Bitcoin without leaving any back doors for the government. So I want to hear your guys' opinion on Satoshi Nakamoto. Was he just a random guy, or was it a group of people, but also was it someone from the NSA who created Bitcoin? Why don't you go first, AC?
All right. I've seen similar conspiracy theories in the past. The NSA developed SHA-256, which is the hashing function integral to Bitcoin. And so I don't think it's anything new. I did watch the video about backdoors, but really I think the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto is not one individual. It's probably a group of people, cross-section of the cypherpunks. And either way, it's not a big deal to me. And honestly, I hope we never, ever figure out who Satoshi is or was. I think one of the greatest gifts he gave to Bitcoin was developing Bitcoin and then walking away and disappearing. So for people who want to try to figure out who Satoshi is, I don't stand with that group. I'd rather not ever know.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. I actually have done work with the NSA and previously in my career, and I know people there. And if it was the NSA, it certainly is possible, and it would have not been done by just one or two people there. It would have been a fairly decent sized project, I would imagine. I don't know if it really matters at this point. It's a moving locomotive with a lot of steam behind it. I don't know if it really matters all that much. Assuming that there's not some nefarious plan that they have, but I don't know if that would even be the case. I've heard this theory before. Again, I mean, it's fun to think about this stuff. I still kind of default to the Hal Finney theory makes the most sense to me, because I don't believe any of the original funds have ever been used or spent or anything. So I know maybe the person who did it has some sort of superhuman control and has absolutely no financial needs or children with braces or so I guess that's certainly possible, but the fact that those original tokens are just untouched kind of leads me to believe that maybe it's just somebody who passed on.
Yeah, and my
I completely
question.
agree, Walter. I think
Go ahead, AC.
the timing of Satoshi's disappearance on the forums kind of lines up with the passing of Hal Finney, and is probably the most likely scenario. And then it also makes sense if you guys are following like the fake Toshi trial out in the UK. Part of his argument is, well, Satoshi would have come out and proved me wrong, but he hasn't, so I really am Satoshi. And I'm surprised that no one, at least from the articles I've read, no one has actually come out and said, well, what if Satoshi passed away and he can't come out and speak on his own behalf? And so I tend to agree with you, Walter.
Yeah, that's fascinating. My question was like, okay, did the NSA create Bitcoin? And so this is a question to you guys, because I don't know. Even if they did, I mean, how can they like actually manipulate it or do a rug pull? Like, because Bitcoin is so decentralized, there's so many people invested in it, and it's such a big deal. Even if the NSA started it, and even if they are Satoshi, so they have the 1 million Bitcoin in a wallet, like, what could they actually do to harm Bitcoin at this point after it's gained so much steam?
Yeah, I think the other point too is, I mean, when I worked there, I was there as an outside contractor, which is a pretty fun experience going in that building because the security is pretty interesting.
Wow.
They flip through all your notebooks, and you can't bring a pen, you can't bring your phone, you get scanned like with those scanners that they have at the airport, and all the plants are fake because they obviously can't have people come in there and water the plants, and they have these red lights on the ceiling that kick on whenever there's an outsider in the building, just so everybody knows, like, there's somebody from outside. And I mean, it's really interesting working
Wow.
there. But just like almost at every other government agency at this point, they can't innovate on their own. They have to do it through outside, intellectual capability. It's just the way the government is. They don't really have a whole lot of innovators that work there permanently full time. It's mostly just bureaucrats. And I'm not trying to sound elitist or anything. That's just kind of how it is. So that's another reason why I really don't believe it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say there's another conspiracy theory out there that it was a pet project of like proof of work. SHA-256 consensus model was a pet project of the NSA, and it was shelved and tabled. And then the developers eventually leaked it out into the wild. I don't pretend to believe that, but I mean, if we're going to play tinfoil hat games, that's another theory that I've heard floating around over the years.
Well, in this video that I can't show you, by the way, because I have to run the stream through Firefox today for some reason, I can't even share any screen. This is ridiculous. So you're stuck with this face the whole time. Anyway, the
like
guy's
the Stone
saying
Age.
that in the beginning, there were a bunch of I don't know what you would call it, like security, not algorithms, but uh, whatever, security patches or something, and that the NSA had said, look, all these security patches are safe. There's no back doors. And Satoshi, instead of using one of those, he used a different one. And all of those that the NSA said did not have backdoors, it ends up they do have backdoors. So that's why he was saying, like, Satoshi knew, somehow he knew, and that's why he used this different again, I'm not thinking of the term, but encryption thing or something. I don't know.
There definitely are some interesting connections with the government and, like, hacker community. And if you look at a lot of the more famous out there hackers the last 10 years, many of them have actually had kind of very terrible things happen in their lives. And I think this isn't really bad luck or things that happened organically, but probably things were done on purpose because these people know a lot and they're dangerous, So yeah, I mean, there are some weird things going on there, I think, but who knows?
Yeah, I also think that maybe there's a little bit of correlation without causation. To say that Satoshi chose a particular hashing function because it didn't have a backdoor and he knew it because he used to work at the NSA, I think it's a little bit of a leap. If we take the mindset in the Bitcoin community of don't trust, verify, the other leap worth considering is that Satoshi, or the group known as Satoshi, actually went through a number of different hashing algorithms and then chose one for a particular reason, and not because they had insider information from working at the NSA. So who knows?
Yeah, great point. Like, yeah, it's easy to look back and sort of rewrite, oh, this is what they must have been thinking and doing. Like, maybe there's no way to prove that, right? Yeah, you can't just always work it backwards. All right, so now let's move to the next topic. Are Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy going to rule the world in the future? Because I don't know if you guys heard this news that now MicroStrategy plans to be the world's first Bitcoin development company. And this is pretty interesting because, look, Michael Saylor, he's an absolute beast in the Bitcoin space, and he has MicroStrategy, this enormous company. And now that Bitcoin price is moving up again, now I think Michael Saylor, like, I think they're $3 billion in the positive now. So it just makes sense that he would want to focus more on Bitcoin. Did you guys hear this news? And do you think, what do you think this is going to mean for Bitcoin if someone of his level with that kind of capital is literally going to start focusing on building Bitcoin apps?
I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, I expect it's more than just vaporware. I think something will come about this. There's a lot of innovation that still needs to happen with Bitcoin. It's regular normies can't figure out how to use it or buy it or do anything with it. So I think there's obviously a whole lot of opportunity there. I think Saylor's certainly proven that he's all in on Bitcoin. I judge a man by his actions, and we can judge him on his actions. So I think it's pretty cool. I'm definitely going to pay attention and watch. I've been around MicroStrategy before in the past. Actually, another place I've done work with as a contractor, and it was actually one of the few places I worked at where I really felt dumb. Like all the people I'm working with, their brains are operating at such a higher level than mine. I feel like a total dummy, and that's one reason I did not enjoy that engagement. So,
Wow.
so yeah, I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I would go so far as to say that Saylor and MicroStrategy will rule the world, but I think with his Bitcoin strategy it definitely has the potential to make MicroStrategy one of the most valuable companies in the world. I would love to see him actually show through his actions, like Walter said, and either develop in house at MicroStrategy or partner with other entities to develop, better UI UX experiences, whether that's on layer one or on something like Lightning. And I think a good opportunity would be for him to partner with, Jeff Booth and Preston Pish over at Ego Death Capital. They announced a couple weeks ago that they're going to be putting up 100 million in funds to try to jumpstart different companies developing in the space. It would be amazing to see Saylor partner with them in the future, just to kind of foot stomp his commitment to development in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, that would be cool. And so, okay, so for adoption, I just got distracted because I saw, hey, we have a comment, but it was actually me. I commented on great. We have this is such a big operation right now. People are zapping us full Bitcoins left and right. That's the kind of donations we're receiving. Okay, just so you guys understand how much of a big shot I am and how big this show is. I think there's like one person. What?
Hey, one is more than zero.
Okay, so in terms of Michael Saylor developing Bitcoin apps and stuff, like adoption is definitely one thing. Like trying to drive adoption by, there's a few ways to do that, right? One is through, like maybe he's going to build on the Lightning Network so people can transact with Bitcoin day to day. Or maybe he's going to make like hardware wallets simpler and easier. Or can you guys think of anything specific he might actually tackle first?
I don't know what Saylor's got his minds on. I know the thing that I always think, like, gosh, I really just want to build this because I still have all kinds of junk that I just need to get rid of. And I hate eBay so much. I would just love if there was an eBay replacement that was just strictly Bitcoin, just so I could unload my crap that I no longer need. I don't want to die and leave a whole bunch of crap for somebody else to have to deal with, because I've had to do that with relatives that have way too much junk. So I wish I could just easily dump this stuff and not have to deal with eBay because they suck so terribly, and just make some Bitcoin.
Well, definitely, I believe there is at least one Nostr app that does that. There might be more than one, but I'm not sure. But that's a good example of a use case for a Nostr app, because there are Nostr apps that are selling all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with these marketplaces is it really isn't about the tech, right? It's about the people. And, good luck getting to however many millions or billions of people are on eBay. I mean, that's not something, you can just guarantee, even if your tech is great. So,
yeah, that'll take a long time. But so then you're thinking that you would love for eBay to sort of implement the Lightning Network or some Bitcoin payment into eBay, and then you could maybe just tell eBay, look, I only want to be paid in Bitcoin, not fiat.
I would love it, yeah. I mean, right now you still have to deal with PayPal, which is just a horrific company with horrific values, and I mean, like, it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, I was going to say that when I think of PayPal, I think of yuck, horrible.
Yeah, exactly. However, eBay, I don't know if you guys noticed the case that happened to them, I don't know, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Did anybody catch that? I mean, they literally had people that worked at the company that were harassing this poor lady who runs an e-commerce website. I think it's called E-Commerce Bites. They were sending her threatening things in the mail, like a mask from the Saw horror movie, and leaving her bizarre messages, and sent her like a funeral arrangement for her husband, like saying that we're gonna basically kill your husband. They're coming to her they're following her in her car. I mean, I think they ended up doing a 60-minute story on it. It was amazing psychopathic behavior, and instead of just improving their application and working harder to like give customers a good experience, they want to go harass this poor couple that run an e-commerce website. I mean, it's just pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, come on, that's just insane. But with the amount of insane things happening in the world, I just covered in today's video, in my news video this morning, I covered the UK is now telling people, look, you're just going to have to settle for jobs that earn less. You're just going to have to earn less for a while so that we can overcome inflation. What?
Yeah.
What?
Didn't Montreal
Effing clown world. What?
Didn't Montreal say you can't light a fire to cook food or something? Did you?
I don't know what. Anyway, let's move on to this because Louis C.K. and I don't know if it was the real Louis C.K. The handle is at not Louis C.K. But anyway, he says, okay, back to Bitcoin. If everything was converted to Bitcoin, how would our country repay its debt? And then Pablo and others said, that's the fun part. You don't. So my question to you guys is, okay, the United States national debt, it's now above 34 trillion, I think, officially. Like, and by the way, no one even knows who we owe that money to, right? It's just, the Fed or who is it? And so can we talk about that for a little bit? Because I actually don't know a lot about the national debt, but I just have this feeling that it's just it's a house of cards. And when it's over, if the US dollar completely collapses, there's no paying it back. Is that right? Or any ideas?
Oopsie.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets paid off, by inflation. Basically, is how that's the only way that it gets paid off. So that's the hidden tax we all pay with everything getting more expensive every year. And they like to make it sound like it's a great deal that inflation is down from last year. Well, everything's still worth less than. I mean, everything is still more expensive. So, I don't know. They keep on kicking the can down the road. That's for sure. They've been doing this for decades. Can they do it another decade? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
think that.
Go ahead.
I think that it's going to continue until there's a catalyst for change. What that looks like, I'm not sure. The only way that they're going to get out of this level of debt is to print their way out of it. And unfortunately, that's going to be on the backs of, multiple generations paying for it through tax, through their effort, through money debasement, through theft, through inflation. It's not going to look pretty. And it's I don't know. Have you guys read the book The Mandibles?
No.
I think if the debt isn't paid for eventually, then the only other solution is default. And the book, which is fiction, paints a pretty grim picture of what it might look like in the U.S. if it were to ever default on its debt.
But I have some fundamental questions. Because printing more money to pay the debt, printing money is why we're in debt. Like, we're borrowing money from the Fed, right? That's where the United States gets its literal dollar bills from, is the Fed, right? Am I right on that?
There are multiple ways to increase the money supply. One of those, like you kind of alluded to, is the issuance of bonds and treasuries, basically creating debt that would be paid back in the future. Central banks would buy those and pay that money to the Fed, and then they would have that issued back through loans to people. And then you talk about like fractional reserve lending. That is another way that with no more fractions, so it's just imaginary lending at this point. That's another way that the M2 money supply is increased through fractional reserve banking. and it's somewhat controlled through interest rates. When there needs to be more money in the supply, then interest rates go down so that more people are taking loans out. When you need to reduce the amount of money in supply, interest rates go up to contract. So that's that expansion and contraction of quantitative easing and quantitative tightening.
Yeah, I might have to find an expert on that to interview, because I just don't understand it. It to me it's a big shell game, and it's, the Federal Reserve, which was created in 1913, apparently just all of a sudden says, okay, we're just going to create money out of thin air and give it to you, and now you owe us. And it's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, are we just indentured servants and forever?
Yeah, really, basically, at the end of the day, it's theft, right? I mean, it's money that comes out of our savings, our wealth, what we make, and then where does the majority of this printing go to? This money that's printed, it goes fuels wars, it fuels vaccines that probably aren't largely needed. This all big business. It's all big business, and not going to the small person. I know that. So, back in the day when we had wars, you ever notice that, like, you hardly ever see an old bell anywhere in a town? They were melted down for munitions in prior wars, right? Because we had to recycle and grit and figure our way to kind of handle and do these things back in the day, because we just didn't have unlimited money we could print out of thin air. But I commend them, because what they figured out was, hey, what if we do this thing where we can just kind of invent money out of thin air, and then we can do whatever we want. So it's worked out well for them. It hasn't worked out well for us.
That's an understatement. All right, I want to talk about CBDCs, specifically the United States CBDC, which hasn't been announced yet or anything, but the whole world seems to be moving towards CBDCs for obvious reasons, so the government can monitor you, surveil you, and control you and shut off your bank account. In terms of actually, like, in terms of the U.S. government trying to roll out a CBDC and make it work, and sort of transition from the current monetary system into more of a CBDC, or maybe it'll be a hybrid thing. How do you guys think that's going to happen? Like, is it like literally, like, physically, how's it, like, are they just going to come on the news one night and be like, okay, well, starting Monday, we're going to start converting all your bank account money into tokens and whatever? How's it going to play out? Do you guys have any thoughts?
I think it'll be a corporatocracy kind of thing. I think it'll be done through banks. That just seems to be the way they like to operate now, in exhibiting control, at least initially. They like to kind of do it through their corporate partners. Kind of similar to, like, all of the censoring that was going on in social media. They're not directly censoring us. The government's not coming in here and, like, filtering my web traffic, but they have their lackeys and former FBI agents working at Facebook and Twitter and all these other places to kind of lock things down. So I think it'll be done through the banks that are obviously very tight with the government. The big banks I'm talking about. What can we do? I don't know. I mean, I'd recommend people definitely, if they have accounts with these big banks, they should look to a credit union. If you're former military, go get you a Navy Federal credit union account if you haven't done so already. There are a lot of other credit unions out there, depending on what your backgrounds are. I would think people should look to do that. But what do you think, AC?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a combination, exactly the way you put it, through corporate partnerships. We see right now that what the government can't accomplish on their own, and what corporations and big tech cannot accomplish on their own, they collude together to accomplish. And so it's the unfortunate situation that we live in. I think you hit the nail on the head with the corporate actions flipping over to the government. I think they're going to tie it to benefits. So, in order to file your tax return or file your taxes and get your return is going to be sent to you via CBDC. Welfare programs are going to be given to you via CBDC. If they eventually pass a universal basic income, guess how you're going to get it? CBDC. If you're a government employee or person collecting government pension, those are all going to eventually come from a CBDC. And that's the way that they're going to indoctrinate the people. They're going to say, hey, instead of waiting for your direct deposit to hit your bank and waiting for it to settle 3 days later, you can get it instantaneously and spend it immediately via this brand new CBDC. Oh, by the way, hey, we'll give you 10% more if you accept it in this vehicle. So I think it's going to be a combination of the two.
Have you guys noticed some of the weird things that have happened the last few years with cash money? So, like, I've noticed Starbucks that no longer take cash, card payments only. You go to a concert, you want to go buy a beer or a margarita at the show. A lot of times now they don't take cash. During COVID, I recall a lot of stores were like, "Hey, we're out of cash. We're out on change. Please pay with a card." And I'm like, hardly anybody's shopping because everybody's staying at home. So how are you at cash? That one, I could never figure out what was going on there. I felt like it was some sort of test to me, but maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist. That's what my family says.
Well, being a conspiracy theorist means all that means is that you're ahead of the curve. You see the truth about 2 or 3 years ahead of time, and so when you say it, it sounds crazy. But then 2 or 3 years later, you were right. Yeah, I agree. This rolling out the CBDCs, that's how they're going to do it, and then everyone like most people are just going to hop on board like nothing. They're not going to think twice about it. So when CBDs are rolled out more and more, obviously Bitcoin has become something that the government, I don't think any governments are going to ban Bitcoin, but what do you think they're just going to tax Bitcoin more, or do you like, how are these governments going to handle Bitcoin? Although I guess there are many other investments as well. Like, I mean, obviously gold and silver, but stocks and stuff. So I guess Bitcoin will just be thrown in with all those other investments, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I don't think Bitcoin is a moot point related to this. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be paying us in Bitcoin if just some sort of digital currency. Yeah, it'll be something they can control that isn't truly, decentralized.
Right.
So whether that's, I don't know, Ethereum or who knows what network they'll use to do this or build their own thing, I have no clue.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen? It's kind of a scary time though, because again, most normies, they don't understand anything. I still meet people all the time who you even mention Bitcoin and they just look at you like you have 7 heads and you're a scam artist or something. It's like, it's just weird.
The Matrix is real, and most people are still in it. And I don't know about you guys, but I remember when I was in it, and it isn't easy to break loose of it because you're constantly being propagandized to think a certain way. I mean, it's everywhere. And it isn't until you kind of inside your own head honestly say to yourself, like, what if I'm wrong about everything? And start actually openly looking at alternative views. And then you can slowly kind of defrost that haze of your thinking. But it's not easy. So I think empathy for these people is always good too. I mean, you obviously, they have to come to you. You can't wake them up. And until they're a little bit less zombified, you're just better off leaving it be,
True. Yeah. I mean, as long as they're not rounding us up into camps, conspiracy theorists, literally the National Guard and military rounding us up into camps. As long as it doesn't go that far, we can have a lot of empathy for these normies who don't understand things yet. But if things do go that far, then those normies are the ones supporting these people that are enslaving you in a camp. And it's at that point the level of empathy changes in my mind.
Oh yeah, true. I'm not saying they're not dangerous. They are very dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, and they can turn on us in a dime. I mean, anybody who didn't get the COVID vaccinations might understand how that feels, with the whole world saying like you're a terrible person and you're hurting people and it's all your fault and this and that. And it was pretty interesting to see how rabid that got, how quickly that got rabid, with based on very little actual scientific data too. It was just all propaganda.
Yeah. So I'm actually curious, AC, how you got into Bitcoin. If you want to share your story of how you initially heard about it and what you thought, and then your journey of learning about Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Chris. So, funny enough, I've got a Twitter post from like 2011. I think there's 2 of them out there. And that was kind of my initial discovery of Bitcoin. I didn't buy a single one back then. I probably should have, but I didn't. Kind of like what Walter was talking about earlier. I was still in the military at the time, and I needed a security clearance to do my job. And there was a lot of, negative connotations associated with Bitcoin around 2011 and 2012. So I kept it at an arm's distance away and didn't touch it. You fast forward to 2016. I'm now still in the military, living in Tallinn, Estonia, out there in Eastern Europe on the border of Russia. And I found that they use blockchain technology for their entire presidential voting system. And they use blockchain technology for their medical care system. And being a resident there for 2 years, I was a beneficiary of the medical care system. Obviously, I didn't vote in the Estonian presidential election. And that's kind of what opened my eyes to, hey, this technology has utility. So I jumped head first into the space, started off with Bitcoin, shitcoined for a while. It was the ICO era back then, and so I was juggling tons of coins. The short end of the story is that I lost a ton of money shitcoining around. But more importantly, I learned a lot of important lessons. And it was around 2018 when I decided I wasn't going to shitcoin anymore. Pivoted everything, what I had left, pivoted into Bitcoin. Went to a Bitcoin conference out there in Europe. Bought my first hardware wallet and started doing self-custody in 2018, and then have been Bitcoin only ever since. As far as education, I think during that time, Antonopoulos was like one of the main voices, and then later on, Saylor was a very big advocate. I took the time to read as many books and listen to as many podcasts as I could on my Bitcoin journey, just to learn. And what I find interesting is there are so many avenues of approach with learning. You can look at the technology, you can look at it from an economical perspective, from a fiscal perspective, philosophy, freedom. I think there's so much in Bitcoin that just anybody can find something that's going to get their foot in the door to start their journey down the rabbit hole. So that's the quick and short of my Bitcoin journey.
And was there a time where did your confidence and your resolution and your belief in Bitcoin, was there a time when that just all of a sudden clicked and you're like, oh, Bitcoin is awesome, I understand it enough, and I see that did that happen at once, or did it happen over years? Or maybe was there a moment when you finally realized that Wow. Yeah. What did you have a revelation?
I wouldn't say that it was um, like an instantaneous revelation. Like I said, being a technologist with a background in computer science, IT cybersecurity, um, looking at like hash functions and Merkle trees and cryptography, that resonated with me immediately. And it said, hey, this is really interesting, and I appreciate, you know, solving the Byzantine generals problem, solving the double spend problem with Bitcoin. What really built up my confidence is learning about um, sound principles of money. You know, I didn't learn what debasement was until I was well into an adult. I didn't really know what inflation was until I was much older. And so combining all of those things with the technology is what eventually built my confidence in Bitcoin. Because if you don't understand how money works, um, then you're still in the matrix and you're being stolen from and you don't even know it. And so it takes an understanding from multiple different areas, I think, to really build up that confidence in Bitcoin.
Hmm. And Walter, did you have a similar journey? Uh, can you explain your journey in Bitcoin? I'm very curious.
Similar, but maybe different a little bit. I was introduced to it by a coworker about a decade ago, and even though we didn't have any in-depth conversations about it, really, because I just didn't get it, and it seemed goofy and weird and silly to me at the time. But his conviction really stuck with me because as Bitcoin would go up and up to a new level that just seemed, crazy and ridiculous to like normal people. Well, I remember asking him like, "So you gonna sell some? You gonna, the guy was mining. He had hundreds of Bitcoin. He's like, "Nope, I'm not selling any." I'm like, it kind of blew my mind because this guy was pretty young at the time, and I don't think he had a whole lot of like generational wealth in his family or anything. So his conviction really stuck with me. But it wasn't until years later, as we talked about earlier, I broke more and more out of the matrix of my own thinking of believing the news, thinking that, uh, just having very normie beliefs, listening to NBR and these things and actually engaging in the media. Kind of a change that I think really started for me was just not doing the news, not reading newspapers, largely because I was launching a business, and that was kind of a tactic I read about in the 4 Hour Work Week. Oddly enough, was like, hey, you need to free up time. Stop wasting all your time listening to watching TV and absorbing silly media. Just get to work on your business, right? So I did that, but the byproduct of it also was like I kind of got less clouded in my thinking. And just realizing just how deeply screwed we all have been. Bitcoin is kind of part of that awakening for me. It really fits in well with, what kind of technologies do we have to level the playing field a bit. Social media's part of that as well. The internet's part of that, although those have definitely been co-opted and locked down, and there's been a lot of kind of fuckery there as well. But just the ability for people to actually get news out. And I think we're seeing it lately with kind of the freedom that's on X and other platforms. Like before with the three channels, ABC, NBC, CBS, like a lot of things we've been talking about last 5-6 years, we wouldn't have been talking about. So,
Right.
so for me, it's just kind of largely a part of everything else. As far as the first thing I did in Bitcoin, I just bought a miner. I hooked it up in the house. I got my power set up, and then I quickly realized it's not practical in the house unless you have a very unless you have a basement, I guess. But I don't where I live. I'm at sea level, and it's very noisy. Puts out a lot of heat, and the rest of the people in this home were not happy with me. So I had to quickly that experiment did not work. So then I just moved it to a hosting facility and put all my other miners there. So that's worked out a lot better. But so here reading it, like AC said, the Bitcoin Standard was a huge one for me. That's really the first book I think that really kind of helped click it all into place for me. I've read a lot of the others as well. There's a lot of other great books out there too.
I really find it interesting how Bitcoin was part of it, but also there was these other like freedom of speech stuff, and like it's all it for you. I guess it was all towards freedom and liberty, and really breaking free of breaking out of the matrix and breaking free of the mental programming, which is very cool. Yeah, and
it's cool, but it's also hard. It's cost me friends. It's been stressful with family. I've just kind of learned to largely keep my mouth shut about a lot of things. That tends to work best with certain people.
right.
They're just not ready to hear some of these conversations.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I would have been the same way when I was back in their mind frame.
Yeah. So I have a question. This is a weird question. I literally just thought of it now. You know how in Bitcoin, if you've been following Bitcoin now, we know that there's like basically 4-year cycles, right? Because of the halving, and there are patterns that have emerged in a 4-year cycle. But what about in the beginning? Did they know it was going to be a 4-year cycle? Did they know that maybe they knew it was going to be a 4-year cycle, but did they know, whatever, for 2.5 years it goes up, and then 1.5 years it goes down? Like what, what I'm like? When did the 4-year cycle idea come into play? Do you guys know? You might not know, but
It's actually not a 4-year cycle. So it's based on number of blocks generated. So the 210,000 blocks per epoch, so to speak, and every block is on average 10 minutes. So it comes out to a 4-year cycle, roughly. Whether that was done by design or by accident, who knows? But it does line up with a number of things, including the U.S. presidential election. So I tend to think that it was done on purpose, but I don't know for sure. As far as the price action, I think that's an unintended consequence. In the very beginning, it was effectively not worth anything. And so I don't know that they anticipated that the valuations would move in the direction that they currently do now.
right.
I think politics and social movements and all kinds of markets tend to often have kind of repeating similar cycles in history. So I don't know why Bitcoin would be any different, but in terms of the whole 4-year thing, I don't really have any deep insights there. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, it makes sense what you said, AC, that in the beginning there was probably no way to forecast that, okay, it's going to be, like we call it a 4-year cycle, but it is 210,000 blocks. But they didn't know that it was going to follow the same pattern every time and what that pattern would be. It just sort of emerged that way. That definitely makes sense.
The
Yes,
genius
Walter?
of the Bitcoin design is very humbling to me. I will say, there's so much genius there in the design of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why I said I hope we never, or at least I hope I never figure out who Satoshi or the group known as Satoshi is, because it's been a gift to the world. The majority of the world just doesn't know it yet. But I think history will look back and say the writing was on the wall. It was so obvious. How did the people not adopt it faster than they actually did? When they're looking at it in the history books or the history tablets, so to speak, 100 years from now.
Yeah, totally. So we're getting close to the end here. You guys have did anything this week have a huge impact on you, whether it was news or anything regarding Bitcoin?
I don't know. The one thing that comes to mind for me is this whole Apple headset thing. Just how creepy it all is, honestly. And that's weird for me to say as a technologist and somebody who's generally pretty interested and geeked out on technology, but something about it just rubs me really weird, even though I've played around with VR and stuff before. Not saying it isn't interesting technology or impressive, but seeing these videos of people out in public with these headsets on is just something about that kind of profoundly disturbs me. And I just hope it doesn't take off, but you know, the cat's out of the bag, so we have no control there. We'll have to just see what happens.
I've also seen the videos, and I don't even know what it is. Apparently, it's just some goggles that Apple just launched, and it's like an augmented reality, right? So people can, when they look through the goggles, they can still see the real world, but they're also seeing like screens coming up, and they can use their hands to interact with stuff on those screens or something.
Yes, and then they're locked in place, so they feel very much like real objects. So as you turn around or move around, wherever you put that screen, it's still in that same spot. So it's almost like it's a real physical object, if that makes sense. That
Yeah.
in addition to the spatial audio, and then it's you're able to control things with your eyes because it's monitoring your retina and how your eye movements. So you can look around and it's altering the interface. I mean, it's really crazy, interesting technology, but it's also really kind of spooky to me in a weird way. I can't quite figure out why, but it's just kind of bumming me out.
Yeah, it does. It definitely feels weird, but it also feels clunky, which means that maybe like we seem to still be in that phase where with the whole, virtual reality or augmented reality, it's still so early that everything is clunky and it's not really good and it's weird. And this, to me, it feels like these are phases we have to go through, to mistakes we have to make and figure it out, and then we'll get to a point at some point when they'll make a product that's like, oh yeah, that's it. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, next it'll be glasses, then it'll be contacts, and then it'll be maybe embedded inside your eyeball. It won't even be a contact. But
Right.
I just don't know if I want to live in this world, honestly. So I guess I might end up like the Unabomber in a wooden hut somewhere in the woods. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Jesus. You guys heard that, right? You got
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm all everything's messed up today. Now I got to troubleshoot my Brave browser and everything. So, AC, do you have any last words to share?
No last words to share, but getting to your last question, two things that I've been following. Number one, and I mentioned it earlier, is the Faketoshi trial. I know that doesn't come to a close until like March, but hopefully that settles it once and for all, that that person, who I refuse to use his name, is a liar and a fraud, and we don't ever have to worry about him ever again. And then the other one that I found interesting, and I know I'm breaking a rule here about talking about ETFs. One thing that I found very interesting was Fidelity up in Canada added a 1% allocation to their all-in-one fund. And so now it just opens the doors to more people who own Bitcoin, or I should say have exposure to Bitcoin, because they don't own the underlying asset. They own a paper IOU to Bitcoin that they will never actually see. But they have exposure to Bitcoin without ever even knowing anything about it. And so I find that interesting. I think that that is going to be the first of many basket of ETFs that are going to hold exposure to one of the Bitcoin ETFs. And what that really means is that, supply available on exchanges is going to continue to go down. And I think that that's good for adoption.
Right. Like, so when just a normal person with their 401k allocates to this one fund, 1% of it goes into the Bitcoin ETF. So essentially, I mean, if you expand it out, it's almost like if the whole, all the money invested in the world in 401ks, maybe 1% of it all is going to be in Bitcoin, at some point soon. And that's a lot of money. Yeah, it's very exciting. I don't know. I don't mind talking about the ETF, and I don't mind the ETF at all. I mean, I know there are some Bitcoiners who think it's the end of the world and this is ruining it. And I'm like, it is what it is, man. You can't, when you create something that's free and open and everyone has the liberty to do whatever they want, this is what you get. And I don't see it as a bad thing. And maybe this will be the first exposure for people. Like maybe like we're talking about mentally, if they know that, 1% of their fund is in Bitcoin, and they're like, oh, interesting. And maybe 2 years later, they hear more about Bitcoin, and then they're like, oh, this Bitcoin thing must not be that bad. And so anyway, it's all part of changing the psychology of people. I agree with that, AC.
Yeah. To be one counterpoint, I watched a video earlier this week, and it was Pomp interviewing, I think it was Alex Kruger, and he said that he thinks the Bitcoin ETF is a Trojan horse. So you can go out and find that video and kind of get his perspective on why he's not a fan of the ETF. And Chris, I'll shoot you a link to that. You can throw it in the notes if you'd like.
Perfect.
Did you all see the video of the El Salvador president giving his speech? That was a pretty cool one too.
Yeah. I don't know that we would ever see in the U.S., an election rate of 84%, all in favor of one single person. So that was pretty impressive for El Salvador.
I know Bitcoin isn't the whole equation there. I mean, it's also about locking up criminals, but it's still pretty inspiring to see that.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. I mean, we need brave people who are willing to step up and do this, and that, because so then we can all look at them and we gain strength from that, right? So
we need to pool all of our sats and just find some country that is willing just to sell out to us, and then we just take it over as the first Bitcoin country.
Maybe that's Texas.
maybe so. I'd like to hear in the next show a little more about Estonia, the AC's experience, because I've heard some really interesting things about Estonia, and it sounds really like they're really doing some interesting forward-thinking stuff over there.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about it. That was an amazing assignment to be at for 2 years, and we can get into it in another one. It was a very interesting time. As well, especially looking through the lens of Russia and Ukraine, because a similar buildup took place when I was there in 2017. So, yeah, we can table that and save it for another conversation.
Oliver Stone's film on Ukraine's must watch if you haven't seen it, to try to understand a little bit about some of the background on Ukraine. Ukraine on Fire, I think, is the name of it. Pretty interesting.
Interesting. Definitely check that out. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you both. Thanks for hanging out on the Bitcoin panel. And see, the Bitcoin panel right now is like Bitcoin on February 9th of 2009. No one knows about it yet. So anyway, yeah, I don't know what else to say, but thank you guys. This has been great fun, and I always learn a lot, and so I appreciate you guys sharing all the wisdom. So definitely, everyone who's watching, make sure you subscribe and follow the channel, and also look in the show notes. There's all kinds of links, and you can connect with us and everything. So, all right, well, this has been the Bitcoin panel. Say goodbye, you guys.
Adios.
Until next time. Thanks.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
No, you're supposed to say goodbye, you guys, because I said say goodbye, you guys. Sorry. All right, and then let's end it the way you're supposed to end something. Oh wait, I forgot. I wanted to tell you this one thing about Bitcoin. See, the thing is,